In our last episode, we showed you how LiDAR revealed over 6,000 structures hidden beneath the canopy of Ecuador's Upano Valley. Cities older than anything archaeologists thought possible in the Amazon. Garden cities, connected by roads, fed by engineered farms, home to tens of thousands of people for over 1,000 years. But Ecuador was just the beginning, because 1,500 kilometers south, in the flooded savannas of Bolivia, a German archaeologist named Heiko Prumers had been digging by hand for 20 years. And what he found there makes Ecuador's discovery look like a preview. In May of 2022, the journal Nature published what Prumers and his team had uncovered beneath the Bolivian Amazon. Conical pyramids rising 22 meters above the surrounding savanna. 70 feet tall, built entirely from earth, surrounded by triple rings of moats and ramparts, connected by hundreds of kilometers of engineered causeways and canals, and organized into a 4-tier urban hierarchy spanning 4,500 square kilometers. And almost nobody talked about it. We need to go back to the beginning to understand how this happened. In the late 1990s, Heiko Prumers of the German Archaeological Institute in Bonn arrived near a small village called Casarabe in Bolivia's Beni department. The Llanos de Mojos, they call this region. 120,000 square kilometers of seasonally flooded savanna in the southwestern Amazon basin. For most of the year, it looks like an ocean of grass. During the rainy season, huge areas simply disappear underwater. Local people had long told researchers about the mounds, strange raised areas scattered across the landscape that did not look natural. Previous archaeologists dismissed them as geological features or termite hills. Prumers and his colleague Carla Jaime Betancourt from the University of Bonn thought otherwise. They started excavating by hand, and what they found changed their understanding of those mounds completely. They were not natural formations. They were the eroded stumps of pyramids and platform buildings, compacted by centuries of rain and overgrowth until they barely registered as anything unusual. But hand excavation is agonizingly slow in this tropical environment. Year after year, Prumers and James Betancourt returned to the archaeological dig sites in Bolivia, documenting pottery fragments and soil layers, building a picture fragment by fragment. They knew the mounds were artificial. They suspected they were part of something larger, but they could not prove it without seeing the full landscape at once. And the dense Amazon jungle does not let you do that on foot. Then, in 2019, everything changed. A helicopter equipped with a Regal View-X1 laser scanner and a Trimble positioning system flew at 200 meters above ground level over the Bolivian Amazon. Flying at 45 knots, the scanner fired approximately 1.5 million laser pulses per second along 200-meter parallel strips with 50% overlap. Martin Scheich of Arctron 3D processed the data using specialized Regal software. The total area scanned covered approximately 200 square kilometers distributed across 6 unconnected zones. When the first processed images came back, Prumers described what he saw. The results were excellent, and they showed how effective the technology was even in dense rainforest. But excellent does not capture what those images actually revealed. At a site called Cotoca, the LiDAR data on the computer screen stripped away the dense tropical vegetation layer by layer and exposed a monumental urban center covering 147 hectares. That's roughly the size of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The core area alone stretched across 22 hectares, built 6 meters above the surrounding terrain, on a massive artificial terrace visible in the aerial survey imagery. And rising from that terrace, conical pyramids towering 22 meters into the sky, 70 feet of earth shaped by human hands in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Now, we need to put that in perspective. Building just the core area of Cotoca required moving approximately 570,690 cubic meters of earth. That number might not mean much on its own, so consider this comparison. The Acapana Pyramid at the ancient ruins of Tiwanaku in the Bolivian highlands is the largest structure in that famous Andean archaeological site. It required roughly 53,500 cubic meters of earth to build. Cotoca's core is more than 10 times that volume, 10 times the biggest thing at Tiwanaku. And Cotoca sits not in the Andes Mountains, where complex civilizations were expected, but in the Amazon basin, where they supposedly could not exist. 3 concentric rings of moat and defensive rampart surround the center, visible from satellite imagery as dark water-filled channels cutting through the green savanna. Causeways radiate outward from Cotoca like spokes on a wheel, raised earthen roads stretching across the flat grasslands, connecting to lower-ranked sites across a controlled territory of approximately 500 square kilometers containing 18 other monumental sites. A canal stretching more than 7 kilometers links Cotoca to a lake called Laguna San Jose. This was not a village. This was not even a town. This was a capital. But Cotoca wasn't alone. 40 kilometers away, across the Bolivian savanna, the LiDAR revealed a second monumental center called Landívar, 315 hectares of ancient urban landscape, slightly smaller than Central Park in New York. 3 concentric defensive rings carved into the earth. A circular water reservoir approximately 60 meters in diameter positioned beside the settlement, still visible in modern satellite photographs. And roughly 276,000 cubic meters of earth moved to construct its core. Both ancient cities feature stepped platforms up to 6 meters high, U-shaped earthen buildings, rectangular platform mounds, and those extraordinary conical pyramids. Every major structure at both sites is oriented toward the north-northwest, as revealed in the overhead LiDAR elevation maps. Not randomly placed, uniformly aligned, consistent with extended burial orientations found at the archaeological excavation sites. This suggests a shared cosmological worldview governing the architecture. These were not improvised settlements. They were planned, philosophically coherent cities. But the strangest part is what sits between them, or more accurately, what does not. No causeways connect Cotoca to Landívar. Every other significant site in the region links to one of these 2 centers through an elaborate road network, but the 2 largest cities have no direct physical connection to each other. Prumer's team concluded they may have functioned as independent city-states, possibly rivals, possibly partners, but operating under separate political authority within the same cultural system. 2 pyramid cities in the Bolivian Amazon that were not connected to each other, each controlling its own network of satellite settlements, each defended by triple moats. And between them, the LiDAR revealed something even more systematic. The team classified the settlements they found into 4 distinct tiers. At the top, the primary centers, Cotoca and Landívar. Over 100 hectares each, triple defensive structures, extensive civic ceremonial architecture, and numerous radiating causeways visible in the LiDAR elevation maps as bright lines crossing dark terrain. Below them, secondary centers, polygonal enclosures of 21 to 41 hectares, with their own civic architecture on base platforms, roughly 1/3 the size of Cotoca's core. Then smaller settlements, circular ditches enclosing up to 2.5 hectares, with small central platforms. And finally, minimal sites of about 1/3 of a hectare, possibly temporary camps or specialized work areas scattered along the riverbanks. 26 settlements documented in total, 11 of them previously unknown. But that was just the 200 square kilometers the helicopter scanned. Previous remote sensing work across the broader Casarabe culture territory spanning 4,500 square kilometers, had already identified 189 large monumental sites, 273 smaller sites, and 957 kilometers of canals and causeways combined. Think about that for a moment. Nearly 1,000 kilometers of engineered waterways and earthworks in the Amazon, built by a civilization that, according to the mainstream academic consensus of the 20th century, could not have existed here. Jose Iriarte from the University of Exeter, who co-authored the study, noted that platforms positioned at strategic causeway junction points appear to have functioned as controlled access checkpoints. Access to these sites was restricted and managed. This was not an open landscape of scattered villages. This was a policed territory, with infrastructure for controlling movement. And Heiko Prumers, looking at what LiDAR had shown him after 20 years of digging by hand, emphasized something crucial about where this civilization came from. The Andes are very well studied, and you will not find any site of this type there. This is not something that came from the Andes. It is uniquely Amazonian. The Casarabe culture, named after the village where Prumers began his work, flourished from approximately 500 CE to 1400 CE. That is 900 years of continuous civilization, ending before Europeans ever set foot in the Americas. They did not collapse because of conquest. Severe drought is the leading candidate for whatever ended the Casarabe culture, and it happened on its own terms. Christopher Fisher of Colorado State University, writing in the commentary that accompanied the Nature paper, described the architectural scale of these sites as something that cannot be overstated, on a par with that of any ancient society. Any ancient society. Not any Amazonian society. Any society, anywhere on Earth. Prumers himself looked at the LiDAR data, looked at the decades of work still ahead, and made a prediction. He said he was sure that in the next 10 or 20 years, we will see a lot of these cities, and some even bigger than the ones presented in the paper. Bigger than 22-meter pyramids surrounded by triple moats across a 4,500 square kilometer territory. If you are finding this as extraordinary as we did when we first read the Nature paper, hit like and subscribe. We cover archaeological discoveries like this every week, the ones that mainstream channels overlook, and we are just getting started with this one. Now here is what makes this story even more unsettling. Because the Casarabe pyramids were not actually the first clue that something massive was hidden in the Bolivian Amazon. Someone saw this coming more than 60 years ago. In 1961, a geographer named William Denevan from the University of Wisconsin was flying over the Llanos de Mojos in a DC-3 propeller aircraft, the same region, the exact same landscape where Prumers would find his pyramids 6 decades later. Denevan was working on his doctoral dissertation about the region's landscapes, and what he saw looking down from that airplane window over the vast green plains of Bolivia is preserved in one of the most vivid first-hand accounts in the history of Amazon archaeology. "I am looking out of one of these DC-3 windows," he recalled, "and I am going berserk in this little airplane. I knew these things were not natural. You just do not have that kind of straight lines in nature. Straight lines, geometric patterns, raised earthworks stretching across the savanna below, visible from altitude but completely invisible from the ground." Denevan's doctoral thesis, completed in 1963 at the University of California, Berkeley, documented what he saw and argued that these were the remains of large-scale human engineering. His dissertation focused specifically on the Llanos de Mojos, the exact territory the Casarabe culture occupied. He had the answer in 1963. But the academic world was not ready to listen. For 3 decades, one voice dominated Amazonian archaeology. Betty Meggers, a research anthropologist at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., published a landmark book in 1971 called Amazonia: Man and Culture in a Counterfeit Paradise. Her argument was absolute. The Amazon's nutrient-poor soils placed a fundamental ceiling on population density and social complexity. Only narrow river floodplains could support anything beyond small, mobile groups. Complex civilizations were biologically impossible in this tropical environment. The soil would not allow it. The dense jungle canopy would not sustain it. End of discussion. Meggers' environmental determinism dominated the field from the 1970s through the 2000s. 3 full decades in which archaeologists who suggested otherwise were marginalized, defunded, or simply ignored. Denovan saw the straight lines from his airplane window. He wrote about them. He published about them. And for most of his career, the establishment shrugged. Then LiDAR came along, and it proved him right about everything. But the vindication did not stop with the 2022 Nature paper. Beginning in 2025, a cascade of new studies began revealing that the Kasarabe civilization was even more sophisticated than the LiDAR images suggested. In January 2025, a team led by Umberto Lombardo at the Autonomous University of Barcelona published a study in Nature that overturned one of the last remaining assumptions about how these people lived. The conventional view held that Amazonian societies survived on slash-and-burn agriculture. You cut and burn a patch of forest, farm it until the soil is depleted, then move on. Simple, primitive, unsustainable. That was what the textbook said. Lombardo's team proved the opposite. Through analysis of phytoliths and other botanical evidence from soil samples collected across the Kasarabe territory, they demonstrated that the Kasarabe culture practiced intensive, year-round maize monoculture. Not slash and burn. Industrial-scale grain farming across the open grasslands, supported by a sophisticated dual system of drainage canals that controlled seasonal flooding and artificial farm ponds that stored water for the dry season. This irrigation infrastructure enabled 2 full harvests of maize each year, across vast stretches of what looked, from above, like empty grassland. The researchers described it as the Amazon's Neolithic Revolution, a phrase deliberately chosen because it echoes the agricultural transformation that gave rise to the first cities in ancient Mesopotamia, roughly 6,000 years earlier, on the other side of the planet. The same kind of agricultural intensification that built Ur and Babylon was independently invented in the Amazon. Not imported from the Andes, not borrowed from Mesoamerica. Developed here, in the flooded savannas of Bolivia, by people the academic establishment spent 3 decades insisting could not exist. 7 months later, in August 2025, a separate study published in Nature Communications provided a 2,700-year ecological record for the Upano Valley in Ecuador, the same site we covered in our previous episode. Mark Bush from the Florida Institute of Technology and Crystal McMichael from the University of Amsterdam analyzed sediment cores drilled from the bottom of Lake Cormoran, a small lake near the Upano ruins in the Ecuadorian Andes. Their conclusion was devastating for the pristine wilderness narrative. The modern forests and tropical vegetation surrounding those ancient cities have only existed in their modern form for about 200 years. Before that, the landscape was shaped entirely by human activity. For over 2 millennia, people managed, cultivated, and engineered every square meter of it. Then in December 2025, a LiDAR survey of the Choco Andino cloud forest region in Ecuador, conducted by the Instituto Metropolitano de Patrimonio, scanned just 600 hectares of dense mountain jungle. That is 2% of the 280,000 hectare study area. In that 2%, they found over 200 previously unknown earthen mounds and more than 100 agricultural terraces carved into the hillsides, a 5-fold increase in known structures. In April 2025, archaeologist Carlos Zimpel Neto from the Federal University of Rondônia used drone-mounted LiDAR in Brazil's Rondônia state and rediscovered a lost 18th-century Portuguese colonial settlement called Lamego, buried in the jungle near the massive stone walls of the Príncipe da Beira Royal fortress. Alongside it were pre-Columbian circular geoglyphs with ceramic fragments dating 1,200 to 2,000 years old. The Washington Post ran a major investigation on the find. Now pull all of this together. A 2023 study published in Science, led by Vinicius Peripato at Brazil's National Institute for Space Research, gathered data from over 200 researchers across 24 countries, drawing on 80 years of combined fieldwork. They analyzed LiDAR data covering roughly 5,300 square kilometers. That sounds like a lot, until you realize the Amazon basin covers 5.5 million square kilometers. They scanned 0.08% of it, less than 1/10 of 1%. And even in that tiny sample, they discovered 24 previously unreported earthworks. Their predictive model, combining known earthwork locations with topographic features and tree survey data from across the Amazon basin, estimated that between 10,000 and 24,000 pre-Columbian earthworks remain hidden beneath the vast green canopy. And they found something else. 53 domesticated tree species, including cacao, Brazil nut, and rubber trees, concentrated near earthwork sites. The ancient settlements and the current tropical forest are not separate. They are connected. The trees growing there today, the ones we see in aerial footage of the Amazon stretching to the horizon, are descendants of trees that people planted centuries ago. We may have known about 9% of what is actually down there. 9%, which means 91% of the Amazon's archaeological record is still buried. But here's the part of this story that keeps us up at night. Because while scientists are racing to find these sites, the sites are being destroyed faster than anyone can document them. In 2024, deforestation across the Amazon exceeded 1.7 million hectares in 9 countries. That was the 5th highest total on record. Fires burned 2.8 million hectares of primary forest, filling the skies with smoke visible from satellite images and shattering the previous record. Illegal gold mining, what Brazilians call garimpo, has expanded by roughly 1,200% since 1985, with dredging barges and excavation pits scarring the riverbanks across the basin. 77% of mining operations show explicit signs of illegality. Archaeologist Bruno Rocha from the Federal University of Western Para has documented what happens when miners reach archaeological sites. They dig and find artifacts, she reported, even wooden ones at times, which are very hard to come by. But it is all lost, smashed, scattered, or thrown into rivers. Carla Hames Betancourt, who co-authored the Nature paper with Prumers, put it bluntly. Time is running out because the spread of mechanical agriculture is destroying a pre-Columbian structure every month in the Llanos de Mojos region. Every month, one structure gone, forever. Eduardo Neves at the University of Sao Paulo captured the scale of what is being lost. We are seeing 12,000 years of landscaping being destroyed by 30 years of deforestation to raise cattle and grow soy. We urgently need an extra layer of protection with the help of archaeology. 2 major rescue efforts are underway. Neves leads Amazonia Revelada, funded by a $1.8 million National Geographic Society grant. His team includes archaeologists and indigenous community members surveying remote jungle sites across 5 Brazilian states using drones and ground-penetrating radar. In the Kwikuro indigenous community in the Xingu region, a technical geographer named Kumesi Kwikuro personally piloted a drone-mounted LiDAR unit over the forest canopy, and the data belongs to the indigenous people themselves. Meanwhile, Chris Fisher at Colorado State University founded the Earth Archive with an ambitious goal: to use airborne LiDAR to scan the entire planet's surface, prioritizing high-risk tropical forest areas before they disappear. The estimated cost to scan just the Amazon rainforest is $12 to $15 million. Fisher's warning is the one that stays with you. We're running out of time because we're losing the Amazon, and we're going to lose things that we never knew were there. 22-meter pyramids rising from the Bolivian savanna, 1,000 kilometers of causeways and canals stretching across the grasslands, a 4-tier urban hierarchy spanning thousands of square kilometers of tropical lowland, industrial-scale agriculture that mirrors the Neolithic Revolution, and 91% of it still undiscovered beneath the dense jungle canopy, while deforestation erases one structure every single month. But the pyramids and the causeways are not even the strangest part of this story. 1,500 kilometers north of Bolivia, in Brazil's Acre State, researchers have mapped more than 450 geometric earthworks visible in aerial photographs of cleared jungle. Perfect circles, perfect squares, perfect hexagons, carved into the red earth thousands of years ago. Nobody knows what they were for. And deep in the upper Xingu River basin, an anthropologist named Michael Heckenberger has been living with the Cuicuro indigenous people for more than 3 decades. What he uncovered there, a network of 20 interconnected towns, with roads 50 meters wide cutting through dense tropical forest, led him to make a comparison that stunned the archaeological community. He compared the Amazon to downtown Manhattan. But perhaps the most unsettling discovery of all is not a pyramid or a geoglyph. It is the soil itself. A black, self-regenerating earth called terra preta that ancient Amazonian civilizations engineered from scratch, visible in cross-section as a thick, dark layer beneath the jungle floor. Soil so advanced that it still regenerates on its own. Soil that modern scientists, with all of our laboratory technology, still cannot fully replicate. The Amazon rainforest was not a pristine wilderness. It never was. It was an engineered garden that once fed millions. And in the next episode, we will show you exactly how deep that garden goes.